afternoon, and welcome to AIADA's AutoTalk. I'm your host, Rachel Soleimani. Before we get started, a few quick reminders as always. Anyone that is registered for today's program will be receiving a copy by the end of this week. And if you have any questions, feel free to enter them into the Q&A bar in the lower right-hand side of your interface. Now, please join me in welcoming Dylan Bailosis, Security and Professional Services at Dell Technologies. If there's anyone to speak to cybersecurity, it's this guy. And so with that, Dylan, I'll let you take it away.
Yeah, thank you so much. Really appreciate the time and appreciate the platform to, talk a little bit about security and what, small and medium-sized businesses and auto dealers are facing with today. So again, just really appreciate the time. And I'm super excited to be with you guys. And that's for a couple of reasons, right? So, I spend most of my time talking to small and medium-sized businesses, sort of about what their plans are for security, what their concerns are, what their view of security is. And, it kind of runs the gamut in this space, right? And I feel like a lot of auto dealers sort of fall into that small and medium-sized business place. A lot of them are family-owned, whatever. And so, a lot of people within the small and medium-sized business space, like they aren't really sure what to do with security, right? They know that they want to secure their information, but they don't really know the best way to do it, right? And they don't know really, how to go out and find the appropriate resources, how to gauge the technologies. And so, what I'm here to talk to you guys a little bit about today is what you as business owners are facing. What is out there as alternatives to protect yourself versus just hiring talent yourself. And just kind of talk about the benefits to an effective security strategy. So that's what we're going to do today. So just kind of kick it off, got a quick agenda for you. So we're just going to go over, hey, why is this important now? Why is security such a hot topic, right? And what kind of threats are being presented in the marketplace. From there, you're going to dive into what you guys as IT leaders, business leaders, deal with in terms of actually protecting your environment and sort of what the financial costs are. From there, we're going to talk about what is sort of the hot buzzword in security right now, which is managed detection and response, also known as MDR. And at the end, we'll save some time for Q&A. I'll let some people type in the chat box and ask any questions they might have. So yeah, without further ado, let's go ahead and talk about sort of what are the table stakes when it comes to security today. What's going on? And as you can see with the numbers below, they're pretty eye-opening, right? Since 2020, there's been almost a 70% increase in cyber crime, right? And I'm sure you guys have seen, lots of different stories in the news. I think most recently, there was one over the 4th of July holiday weekend with SHI, who's a major technology distributor. There was just one in LA, County School District had a ransomware attack, and even Uber actually was just hit, I think last week, right? A teenager actually was able to exploit some credentials they had to completely gather all of their consumer information, which is kind of crazy, right? And I think they did it via Slack. The other number that kind of jumps out to me here is that 82% of employers report a shortage in cybersecurity skills. And to me, this is almost like a oxymoron comparing those two numbers I mentioned, right? An increase in cyber attacks, but a shortage of cybersecurity skills, right? You wouldn't want those necessarily to go together, right? You would hope that with the increase in cyber attacks, there would be an increase in skill set and resources. That simply just hasn't been the case, right? And so why should you guys as business leaders care about security, right? Outside of obviously, wanting to, keep your information safe and keep your consumer data safe, it really comes down to brand, right? And there's been multiple studies done over the years that essentially say, kind of what my numbers are saying, right? That, 84% of customers stay loyal to businesses that don't have security breaches, right? That stay out of the news. And if you think about it, it makes a lot of sense, right? For me or you as a consumer, if I do business with a company and they have all my critical information and they are the victim of a hack, then I'm probably going to try and go elsewhere. And if I'm also, evaluating businesses to spend my money with, if I know a company's been hacked, I'm probably not going to spend my money there. And for you guys as auto dealers, I think you guys are in kind of a unique position where obviously you guys do a lot of financing with cars, right? So you have a lot of really personal information. And so, if anything were to ever happen and a breach were to occur, that could be a big impact to your brand, right? And so when it comes to a hit on your brand, it really comes down to the inability to retain revenue, right, or the inability to go acquire new customers. So in the long run, it's going to really hurt the coffers of your business, right? And for a lot of small and medium-sized businesses, some can't afford that sort of hit, right? They can't afford to pay a ransomware to get their data back. And so, things like this are reasons why small and medium-sized businesses are so focused on the security conversation and why they're looking for help. And so, for you guys, this slide's kind of specific for you all. Small and medium-sized businesses are top targets. A lot of people don't realize that. They think that, cybercrime would be, targeted at the companies with a lot of money and a lot of reach. But that's not necessarily the case, right? Because these cyber criminals understand that small and medium-sized businesses are struggling with how to protect themselves, right? They know they don't have the budget to have the best and boldest technology. They don't have the budget to, spend on 12 employees to run security of their environment 24/7. So they go after little wins, right? They try and get the 20K ransoms here and there because they have the bandwidth to do that, right? And to go after a lot of different small and medium-sized businesses. So that's obviously one thing kind of specific to y'all's industry. And then I'm sure a lot of you guys probably know about this, but if you haven't, there was a update to the FTC safeguards rule, which basically is a piece of regulation that determines non-financial institutions that offer things like financing have to have a certain security controls in place, right? So these were sort of the updates around security that they made to protect consumer data. So now there's even more of an emphasis for you guys as auto dealers to want to make sure you have a plan in place to protect your data, right? And so we'll talk a little bit about what that looks like and maybe some of the things that you guys are hearing today or doing today, and talk about why a managed approach might be a good fit. So before we get into that, I just wanted to talk quickly about sort of what are the threats out there today. Who are the people that are coming after these businesses, and what are their motives? And so the first one is just the organized crime, right? This is the one that you see the most of. This is your ransomware incident, where really the motive is just financial gain, right? They are looking to take money from businesses, right? That's the number one piece. The next one we see the most of is insider threats. So these are people that are looking to steal your IP or have some sort of vendetta to wage against you, right? They want to see your business fail. The next two that aren't as seen out in the marketplace, but are definitely starting to rise a little bit, are the nation state incidents, right? And so these really kind of picked off when the conflict in Ukraine started, right? We've seen an uptick in nation state crime since that time. And then hacktivism. So this is basically a hacker who, for some altruistic motive is looking to make a company look bad or to try and take their business down because of, motives of altruistic aims, right? So that's really what we're faced with today. And then for, business leaders, for IT professionals, I like to share this chart because it's kind of walks you through the evolution of cybersecurity and IT environment, right? Where we started and where we are now. So, 10 to 15 years ago, security in an IT environment was really just kind of focused on the network, on the endpoints, right? And so IT leaders, leverage firewalls, they leverage antivirus to stop the known bads and to let the good guys in, right? Let the good guys access their information. But over time, as the adoption of cloud applications has grown, as many more people, went out and started working from home with COVID, basically the perimeter that IT professionals have to defend has grown wider and wider, right? And so, with this increase in the attack surface, as we call it in security terms, essentially, hackers have a better chance of being able to enter your environment, right? They have so many more avenues that they can go through. And so, with this growth in the attack surface, you would think that businesses would spend a lot more time and resources on protecting their customers' data, right, or their individual data as a business. But unfortunately, that's not been the case. We've seen a lot of pressure from business leaders towards their IT staff to, make it work at whatever cost, right? Whether it's working long hours, answering the phone at 3 a.m., whatever it may be, there's just a lot more workload and a lot more pressure on these IT security professionals. So we've seen an exodus of talent, right? And that kind of goes back to the first slide that I mentioned, where there's just not enough talent out there, and this is sort of the reason why there's a lot of burnout. And so, as we talk about what the future looks like in IT security, this is why the managed approach is taking off, right? This is why MDR, managed detection and response, is the hot buzzword in the security space, because there's just a lack of talent out there, but the pressure and the risk are looming ever large, right? And so, a lot of you guys on this call, might know what MDR is, but I'm guessing a number of you don't, right? So I like to share this elementary analogy for what MDR is by comparing security in an IT environment to security in your house. So if you think about the security on your home, you have your initial barriers to entry, which are going to be, your fence, your doors, your locks, your windows, things like that, right? That keep the known bads out and let the known good guys in, right? Let your family in, whoever. In an IT environment, we equate those to your firewalls or your antivirus. It's going to do exactly the same thing, right? It's going to stop the known bads and let the good traffic come in. But a lot of homeowners don't usually just rely on locks, doors, and windows, right? A lot of them have some sort of motion detector or video camera that's in the house to, look for suspicious behaviors, right? And on top of that, there's usually some sort of 24/7, 365 monitoring service like an ADT or a Ring who is monitoring that data and, alerting the authorities in real time to respond. So in a IT environment, it's a similar setup, right? We have some sort of EDR, XDR tool, which basically is just an agent that lives on cloud devices or lives on the endpoints that is monitoring all that data, looking for suspicious behaviors. And when a suspicious behavior is found, it alerts the 24/7, 365 SOC team that will then investigate and respond in real time, right? So really, that's all MDR is. It's just it's just like an ADT or Ring service in your IT environment. And so I'll kind of dive a little deeper into what that looks like in practice by giving you guys a little bit of a reference architecture and what it looks like. And so, MDR providers, they have different ways of doing it. The way that Dell does it is we take a holistic approach. So we monitor, endpoints, we monitor cloud applications, we monitor your network. But some other ones out there, they just monitor the endpoint, right? So definitely take that into consideration when you're looking at different vendors. But essentially what happens is this data from those endpoints or pieces of technology flow up through the initial barrier of defense, your antivirus, your firewalls. And then they go up into the XDR or EDR software that I mentioned on the previous slide, right? That's going to start examining that data for suspicious behaviors. Once that information is found, something suspicious is generated, then it goes over to the human element, right? Where we're going to take a look into it and say, hey, is this something serious that we need to alert our end users about? Or is this just some noise? Is this something that we can use context from other data sources to say, it's not really a big deal, this is normal, it's fine, right? And so that takes away some of the alert fatigue that a lot of IT staff or business owners have to deal with on a day-to-day basis. This service kind of eliminates any wild goose chases that are going to go on for things that don't matter, right? This essentially MDR should only be bringing the most important and critical alerts to your attention that need some sort of action done. And of course, the R in MDR stands for response. So if there is something that is found, any good MDR service should have some sort of remediation and response built into the offering. I'm just going to skip over this slide real quick. We'll talk about it. I mean, this is a super, probably exaggerated example of what kind of cost of building your in-house security team versus what, the average cost of an MDR service costs. So, for 12 employees, this is probably a large organization with probably over 500, 700 endpoints. You're probably paying $4,700 per endpoint to do it yourself. Whereas for an MDR setup, you're probably paying $200 to $500 depending on the vendor you guys use. So there's obviously a cost savings there, right? But to make it a little simpler for you guys and to help you guys in your evaluation process when you're looking at different vendors, just think about MDR like this. It's just the people, processes, and technology that are going to go into defending your environment on a 24/7, 365 basis. And so some of the things that you guys should be looking at, what types of data is this platform examining? I just mentioned on the reference architecture slide, some only look at the endpoints. Others take a more holistic approach like Dell and examine lots of different endpoints, other pieces of data like network, cloud, and endpoints. So definitely keep that in mind. One thing you guys should definitely be considering is, what kind of response and remediation are a part of the platform. And I would definitely encourage you guys to ask for specifics of what this looks like. Some don't really have any true response remediation, or they outsource it to another company. Some, are more willing to work with authorities in the case of a breach, and legal teams and things like that. So there's a lot that goes into it, and not every response is the same when it comes to MDR from what I've learned. And then I think it's important to look at basically the background of the company, right? What is their, DNA? Are they new to the security world, or do they have, over 20 years of experience? I think this is super important, especially considering just how hot this space is right now. I see every time I go to a conference, I see more and more MDR security vendors pop up that I hadn't heard of the last time. So, definitely consider that when you're looking at an approach like this one. And then, I think for you as auto dealers, a lot of the companies that I've talked to in your space tend to use MSPs for their IT staff. So if you guys are using MSPs for your IT staff and security as part of their setup, I would definitely encourage you guys to ask them, what their what their platform looks like, right? They might say it's MDR, but if you dig into it, what does that really look like? Do they have just two guys kind of working in the security of multiple clients? You guys just want to make sure that their attention is on your environment and they have the abilities to manage you guys 24/7, 365. And so essentially, that's it, right? And I want you guys to leave this call by doing a couple of things, right? Just thinking about, what your individual situation looks like. How long would it take for you guys to handle a cyber incident? How long would it take for you guys to find one? And then sort of what would be the implication, not just from a financial standpoint, but from a brand standpoint? Do you think that this would cause some uncomfortable conversations with your clientele? Would it make them leave you guys, right? These are the questions that I definitely encourage everybody who is considering a managed security approach to be asking themselves. And, if it's something that you want to talk with, myself directly and kind of give you my feedback on your situation, feel free to send me an email there. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. I always love kind of hearing everybody's individual stories and kind of poking around and seeing what's going on. So if we can help out in any way, absolutely reach out to me directly and I'd be glad to do that. So I think we have some time for questions. So let me just go see if any have been put into the chat. And if you have any, go ahead and use this time to start typing up some questions. So the first one is, what are the financial implications around not having a system like this in place, right? What happens if I were to be breached? What does that look like from a cost standpoint? I think that's a very good question. So on average, the emergency IR hours that would be required to recover your environment in case of a security breach are around $300 to $500 an hour. And I'm not really a math guru or anything, but I think that comes out to around like $15K as a total, right? Between 40 hours of emergency IR. So it's, quite a sum to stomach. And, when it comes to like, sometimes those services don't always, make it so that you are fully recovered, right? On top of that, time is money in these situations. And, Basically what happens when there are some financial or are some emergency IR hours put into play. They basically come out and they put the same software that would be used in a MDR setup onto an endpoint, and they have to gather all the data from all the different data sources. And so that's going to take time, right? And there are some graphs out there that show basically if the longer a adversary is in your environment, the longer or the more damage they're going to ultimately create, right? So definitely keep that in mind when you are looking at these solutions or considering, the trade-offs. Let's see, got another question here. Oh, what technologies vendor has Dell choosing to use, or is it in-house? So yeah, essentially we use SecureWorks. We actually have a 40% ownership stake in SecureWorks, and so that's who our particular vendor is. Their DNA is in the security space. I think they've been around for over 20 years, and so their software is who we are using, and we have the Dell SOC built around it. So good question. So yeah, I think that's about it, guys. Like I said, if you have any other questions or kind of want to talk to me specifically about your individual situation, definitely reach out, connect with me on LinkedIn. Happy to have whatever conversations I can. And thank you guys so much at AIADA. I definitely appreciate the time.
Bill, and thank you so much for taking your time and speaking with us today. What a really great and important presentation. Again, you will all be receiving a copy of this webinar by the end of this week. To those on the line, join me back here Tuesday, October 4th at 2 p.m. Eastern as Capital Automotive discusses an EV action plan for dealers. For more information about AIADA, visit aiada.org. Thanks for tuning in and have a great day, everyone.